Tuppers are my dad's mother's side of the family. Our story starts in England in 1631, Bury, Sussex to be exact. Thomas Tupper sailed from England in 1631 and landed on the east coast of America in the town of Sandwich, Massachusetts. Thomas Tupper worked as a ship's carpenter, shoemaker, and leather worker. Thomas became an outstanding citizen of Sandwich, serving in the General Court in 1644, and was later deputy for 20 years from 1647 to 1667. Thomas also served on juries, local boards and commissions, and was a charter member of the church, and, for 3 years, from 1667, was selectman of the town. Thomas Tupper was licensed to conduct marriages in the Baptist Church. In his later years, when there was no settled minister, Thomas Tupper conducted religious services as a layman and was deeply interested in religious work among the native North Americans. Thomas Tupper was an avid trader and invested heavily in real estate. He had large land holdings at the time of his death in March of 1667. For 4 generations, the Tuppers resided on the east coast of America until the outbreak of the Revolutionary War in 1755. The Revolutionary War was heating up in America, and by 1760 it looked like the American militia was going to take over power. Our family, being native to England, were loyalists, so the decision was made to flee to Canada before the American militia took over power. 2 brothers, Elias, Eliakim, and their families, were the first Tuppers to arrive in Canada. The brothers set off for Canada and arrived in 1760 in the town of Cornwallis, Nova Scotia. Prior to arriving in Canada, Elias Tupper was deacon of the Church of Plymouth, Massachusetts. When he moved to Canada, he started farming and resided in Annapolis County, Nova Scotia. He farmed for the rest of his days until his death on the 14th of May, 1800, in Tupperville, Nova Scotia. He accomplished an incredible feat by living to the age of 85, as he was born in 1715. Although this may not seem like an accomplishment today, it was very uncommon to live past 50 during this time period. Canada was founded on July 1st, 1867 by the Fathers of Confederation. This meant that Canada was its own country and had gained some independence from Britain. Canada did not gain its independence by fighting one of the bloodiest wars in history. Rather, we gained our independence by a series of mutual agreements and conferences. My ancestor, Sir Charles Tupper, was one of the founding fathers of Canada. Sir Charles Tupper was born on the 2nd of July, 1821, in Amherst, Nova Scotia, to Reverend Charles Tupper, who is a descendant of Eliakim Tupper, the second brother who came to Canada with Elias. Sir Charles Tupper was the Premier of Nova Scotia from 1864 to 1867, but was noted for leading Nova Scotia into Confederation and being the 6th Prime Minister of Canada. Sir Charles Tupper played a vital role in Canada's Confederation. As Premier of Nova Scotia, he convinced the people of the province that Confederation would benefit Canada for an important reason. The Founding Fathers believed that once the provinces came together, once the rebel forces defeated the British in America, that they would try to take over Canada. But if all the provinces came together, it would make Canada harder to take over. Nova Scotia agreed to become a part of Canada thanks to Sir Charles Tupper, and remains a part of Canada to date. Later, on May 1st, 1896, Sir Charles Tupper was sworn into office as the 6th Prime Minister of Canada, but is often not considered a true Prime Minister, as he later resigned on July the 8th of the same year. 1914 was the beginning of the Great War, and also the beginning of a tragic time for our family. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand on June 28, 1914, may have sparked one of the bloodiest and most awful wars in history. Soldiers during this war faced horrible conditions, and while in the trenches and on the battlefield, having to endure lice, mud, trench foot, constant rain, and an infestation of rats. Total casualties, including civilians and soldiers, counted a massive 37 million, making the war one of the biggest in history. My family played a part in this horrific war, and one member paid the ultimate price. My grandmother's great-uncles fought and were drafted during World War I. 4 brothers went over and 3 brothers came back. Royal Stuart Newton served on the 67,526th 2nd Battalion of Canada and was killed during the Arras Offensive, 3rd Battle of Scarpe, on the 3rd of May, 1917. Nobody in our family really knows what happened during this battle, but all 4 brothers were there and watched as Roy was killed. The brothers tried to retrieve his ring, but couldn't bring themselves to do so, as they would have to cut off his finger. The remaining 3 brothers came home with 1 less than they set out with. Shortly after World War I, another war grew from the ashes and sparked into what would soon be the biggest war in history. After World War I, Germany descended into heavy poverty, until one man named Adolf Hitler decided to change that. He promised the people of Germany a better economy, and when he got into power, started to build a secret navy, air force, and military. In 1939, when the Allied nations grew tired of Hitler invading other countries and continuing to break the Treaty of Versailles, they decided to declare war, and soon began another interesting time in history for our family. My grandmother's uncles, Keith Tupper and William Tupper, signed up to go overseas and fight. However, during screening for soldiers, both reacted to a needle given to them to see if they were susceptible to seasickness, and were not sent to France. The other brother, Arthur Tupper, the brother who wanted no part in World War II, was drafted to fight. He soon passed his seasickness prevention test and was shipped off to Scotland, where he would take and later France, where he would take part in some of the greatest Allied victories during World War II. Informally, Uncle Reg, to us, he served as one of the Royal Canadian Engineers and was assigned a tank to service overseas. Arthur had his own workshop in the back of a truck and serviced Sherman tanks for the Allies. He was shipped off to France, where he was there the day of the D-Day landings, but did not fight. He serviced tanks and prepared them to liberate the rest of France. He did this for the remainder of the war and was with the Allies as they liberated the rest of France and the Netherlands. After the war, he came home and lived well into his 80s. I was born in 1999 in Woodstock, Ontario, and am currently living and going to school here. I go to Woodstock Collegiate Institute, the same school my parents, grandparents, and their parents went to. I am the only son born to Annette Trohill and Robert Trohill. After high school, I hope to become a pilot for the Royal Canadian Air Force, but for now, I continue to make my own place in Canadian history.